Guys, welcome back to the show. Welcome back. All right. I totally screwed up and I thought I was broadcasting. I thought I was live. So I was watching this whole video while you guys were probably just sitting in the lobby. So, and I'm just like talking to myself over here. So I apologize. All right. Yeah, it's an early morning for me right now. I still have not had my coffee. Thanks for joining me, guys. Thanks for coming to hang out with me. We're going to get through some news. We got some CPI numbers to go through. And then we're just going to go down the line, right? So let's take a look at the first video. And again, thank you guys for joining me. Evening to everybody everywhere out there in the world. Let's take a look at what's going on. So the CPI numbers just came out, so let's take a look.
And the numbers are coming out for our December read on Consumer Price Index. We're expecting a headline number up 0.3%, and it delivered. That's exactly what we received, up 0.3%. Now, if you look at the previous month in August, it was up 0.4. September, it was up 0.3. So this fits right in. If you look at food and energy, known as core, on a month over month, it's a tenth cooler than expected. It's up 0.2. Now, if you look at year over year, up 2.7 expected, 2.7 arrives. The one glimmer here on the year over year is the core comes in a tenth light to expectations, but the 2.6 level is where we've been. And my favorite numbers, and they really are my favorite numbers, Joe. If we look at the index on the non-seasonally adjusted index, this started in 1913. The index number, 324. And why is that important? Because once again, it's a new all-time high. Pretty much, not all the time, but pretty much every month, we get a new all-time high. 1913. And if you look at the 1957 rendition, which is the core CPI, it comes in at 331 and change. And of course, that's also an all-time high, which goes to all the great conversations you've had on Squawk Box. We don't want disinflation, really. We don't want deflation. And the compounding nature of what's going on probably isn't going to abate. So what's the real answer if we're all grown up about this? We're going to have to grow, and we're going to have to be patient, because time is going to heal this as these prices and various aspects of things like the housing industry become the new norm, and we become less sensitive to where history has been. Back.
See, that new norm thing, like, I don't know if you guys remember last year, they were talking about the new norm, right? And like the new norm is going to be like 3% inflation. Like the whole 2% thing is going away. Inflation or the inflation number is always going to be at like around, 2.7 to 3%, right? Going forward. It's funny to see that narrative is still going or still ongoing. Looks like we had really good numbers. Well, the numbers came in line, so we didn't have a market sell-off, but it looks like the market did react very positively to these numbers. So, inflation not rising is good. And inflation not coming down, I mean, I could take it or leave it, to be honest. It's probably going to be hovering around this, 2.5, 2.7, area for a while. Let's see what else we got here, because I see that the treasuries came down too.
The immediate reaction is right there. We were up negative across the board. There's the
dollar.
Straight down,
on rates.
We were 420 on the 10-year earlier. We're 416. That's been sort of quiet. So what was the...
And the stock market liked it.
Right. What are so with what...
Yeah, 10-year treasury, for those who don't know, usually influences like things like, mortgage rates, especially for commercial properties. So seeing it at 4.16 is pretty good. I remember when this was as high as like 4.5. It was pretty nasty, pretty gnarly. The entire real estate market was just freaking suffering. I mean, it still is. This rate is still pretty high. And I heard an interesting case. And this goes to the whole Fed, thing, the shadow Fed and Fed independence, which we'll probably talk about here in a little bit. But essentially, that if Fed independence comes into question on the global stage, right, the U.S. central bank comes into question on the global stage, that will not be good for these treasuries, right? That will not be good for long-term debt. More countries will probably opt not to buy these treasuries. So we'll see. All right, I'm not calling it or anything, but it was just an interesting point that was made that I thought, you know, merits at least repeating. All right, so anyways, let's see what else we got. We had Nvidia in the news, so let's listen to some Nvidia.
Joining us now, the man behind the call, Chris Queso, the senior research analyst at Wolf. I'm sure I'm not the first to make the chips and queso joke, Chris. Nevertheless,
that's right.
That'd be a great title.
That's the name of our webcast, so there you go.
Perfect. So you know better than I that this is such a battleground. You know, whether you can still stay with NVIDIA because there's so much potential upside, or whether it's time to rotate, as our last guest argued this week, that it's time to rotate into other parts of the industry. So why does NVIDIA have so much staying power, you think?
Well, I mean, first, you know, we're actually rotating, you know, within this space. And our favorite pick for most of the last year has actually been Micron, which, you know, at the time we considered that sort of the poor man's way of playing AI because of the attractive valuation, the fundamentals we saw around that. It's not so poor anymore. Micron's up about 300% year to date, which is why we made this change.
Amazing call, by the way.
Thank you.
If you're right that NVIDIA has that much upside and it's going to triple, that would be quite something.
That would be great. But you know, right now, you know, we see the opportunity in Nvidia because the multiple has pulled back a bit. Stock hasn't done much in the last 6 months, and we do see some pretty strong fundamentals ahead for this year. The most important thing, however, and I think what's most misunderstood about Nvidia is most of this upside, much of this upside is actually coming from pricing. And I think the concern on NVIDIA right now is about competitive pressure. There's others who can do chips and AI. You know, are they going to be able to maintain their market position? And we think the pricing tells the story there about both the sustainable competitive advantage they have as well as their ability to sustain the margins.
Who else? So when you say that you...
Did you guys see that? Like, did you see Micron outperforming NVIDIA? That is crazy. Let's go back to that. Jesus, holy hell. That is insane. And, you know, like Micron, like Micron popped onto my radar like some time ago, but I never really looked at it. And then I found out like its PE was like sub 7, which is pretty crazy. Like it was the cheapest thing you could buy in the semiconductor market. Absolutely insane. Oh, we got Skeptic in the house. Hey man, welcome back. I don't know, man. I'm going to try to do the streaming thing again. I can't guarantee if I'm going to do it every single day. I don't know. Like I'm mixing and matching, playing around with the kind of the format. So today we're gonna test out some news and see how it goes. Like I haven't really watched any of this stuff. I haven't read through any of this stuff. So I just want to see if I can even keep up with it. You know, I like to like look at stuff and then research it and then come to, you know, kind of my own like points. But I'm kind of like, you know, what is it? Free balling at this point, I guess. So anyways, let's keep going.
You have more memory on the chip. You go from 2 GPUs to chip to 4 GPUs. You increase the power. The whole premise of NVIDIA right now is one, delivering value to the customers, providing more performance per watt, more performance per dollar, so that you can do more inference with the same amount of money, which the folks like OpenAI surely need. In addition to again, maintaining that competitive advantage against everyone else, and that's what we see over the next 2 years, which is why we think it's a good value right now.
And what's your response when people say, "Look at Gemini"? I mean, every time you turn around. We're using it in the house more from a user point of view. It's being integrated into Siri now, so we're recreating the Apple, Google, iPhone. I don't want to call it monopoly. If they're using different types of processing units, these TPUs, at the margin, does that erode at NVIDIA's possible addressable market?
Well, it's already in the market. TPU's already been in the market now, and I absolutely believe that TPU is NVIDIA's biggest competitor right now because the performance of those products are closer to NVIDIA than everyone else. But there's good reason for that because Google's been at it. It's a TPU's going on its 7th generation right now. So they're really the only ones with that staying power that have been at this long enough And I should say, it's not just the chip itself, but it's also all the networking and the systems right now. The chip performance alone is not enough to drive the performance that the customers need right now. There's a lot of other things. And so I absolutely believe that TPU is the closest competitor, but it's also because it's owned by Google, it's not going to be sold to the entirety of the market. There's another.
What do you guys think? Like, what do you think, chat? Like, that is crazy. So he's saying that Google's TPUs are Nvidia's biggest competitor, and this, like the business section of that in Google is probably not that large. I haven't checked what their AI data center stuff is. I always would have suspected that AMD would be their biggest competitor. So now you have Google coming out. Or have, you know, they're on their 7th generation TPUs, and those are NVIDIA's closest rival. That is crazy. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it, only because NVIDIA still has all that other stuff that they offer, you know, to data centers for the data center build outs, things like that. They have NVIDIA Link, you know, they have the switches, they have the Ethernet, they have like all-in-one super AI computers versus just a standard, or not a standard, but just an AI chip, right? It's not just an AI chip that they're offering like the Blackwell or the Rubin. You know, they offer so much more different hardware, especially when it comes to networking. Like their new networking stuff is like in the, what is it, in the terabytes, I think, the terabytes of data that they can transfer, which is honestly, well, according to the article, it was like faster than the entire internet. So I don't know, man. I don't know if Google's TPUs are gonna overtake Nvidia. Like that is just, I don't know. That's hard for me to kind of stomach. But you know, again, shout out to anyone who is holding Google. I'm sure you guys are sitting pretty. Google is still a fantastic company. I mean, it's still one of the best Mag 7 companies out there, and they're constantly innovating. So, you know. Evil Duck says TSM outperformed Nvidia too. I know Nvidia's just been getting smoked. We have Victor Senk saying MSTR almost 7+% today. I saw the jump for Bitcoin. Like that's pretty crazy. I think Bitcoin was hovering at around 95 when I checked this morning. There you go, right there. Yeah, Bitcoin 95. Do you expect the rally have started? I have no idea, man. Bitcoin crypto can do anything and everything, right? We could have another, what was it, October 10th or something, where it's like another liquidation event and you know, traders get wiped out. You just don't know with crypto. But, you know, if you're a long-term holder, I mean, I'm a long-term holder, I'm just going to hold Bitcoin and ignore the short-term volatility. You know, if I wake up one day and my Bitcoin, capital gains have doubled, I'm going to be happy. If they are not doubled and, you know, we still are kind of chopping up and down, who knows? I know just from like a liquidity, like a market liquidity standpoint, that liquidity still has not returned to the market. It's improving, but it has not returned to the market. So the appetite for risk on assets is still a little shaky right now. I still believe that we're going to be chopping up and down for quite a while. It'll be a grind higher, right? It'll be a grind higher to the upside for a lot of assets, but it's going to be choppy, right? You're going to have some days that look like we're rallying, we're new bull market, and then the next day it's just a drop down, right? At least that is what I think. That is my base case for at least probably the first quarter into the second quarter. Again, we'll see. Evil Duck says NVIDIA's library CUDA-X is what nobody is talking about. Exactly. Like the CUDA library is the gemstone of NVIDIA. And I think that is really what's going to set NVIDIA apart from everybody. It's not just the hardware. At least that's part of my thesis, my bull thesis for NVIDIA. Check the cost of switching the learning model to the competitor. All the learning that has been done, we all need to restart. Yeah. Or all that has been done will need to restart. That's true. Especially when, because TPUs, like they do one thing really well, right? They're very specialized chips. Whereas the NVIDIA chips are just generalized. But you know, if you're gonna have someone like an OpenAI, you know, improving their models and things like that, I think it'll be good to have those NVIDIA chips because they're not specialized chips. They don't do one thing really well. They do like a lot of different things really well. But on top of that, for like the TPUs, the reason why like OpenAI, all these other companies want these TPUs is because the customer base, right? It's not just a learning model, but eventually you're going to have all these different companies coming and building their own, LLMs or their own, models. And they want to be able to customize the chip, right? They're going to want either a choice between TPU, Nvidia, or AMD or something else, right? I think that's pretty much what the case is, and why there's all this, kind of like, I hate to say it, but the circle jerky between, the AI hyperscalers, and you have Nvidia, AMD, and now Google's TPUs at the center of a lot of it, is because, there's gonna be like looking beyond the hyperscalers, looking beyond like the Meta, the Microsofts, the Googles, looking beyond that to the customer base, to the customers they're gonna serve. The customers that are building different AIs, they're going to want to have access to different, chips, right? To do different things. At least that's what I think. Victor says a leaked insider bought 5,000 of MSTR, so the price jumped. I have not seen that news. I will have to look for that. Let's see. Skeptic says opinion on ISBG income version of BTGD. Man, dude, I'm telling you, man, you need to just have your own channel, bro. Like Skeptic ETF Labs or something, man. You find the most obscure freaking ETFs. Anyways, let's take a look at that real quick while we're on it. Why not? Let's take a look. ISBG. ISBG ETF. Oh, this is the income stake stuff. Okay, I saw you post this. All right, I saw you post this. I didn't even take a look at it yet. And I'm trying to find the website for it. Let's see. I don't know. This is all I got right now. So ISBG refers to the income stake to 1x Bitcoin, 1x gold premium ETF. Like if you're a believer, I think in the debasement trade, like I am, I think this would probably fit that. But again, you're going to have one asset that's extremely volatile. Bitcoin is extremely volatile versus gold premium, right? Or just versus gold. So if you can deal with underperformance during certain time periods, this could probably be a pretty decent holding. But if you're going to have, gold that outperforms Bitcoin like it did last year, or if you have this crazy rally with Bitcoin and gold is kind of just doing its thing, it's like a slow move up. Again, you have to be comfortable with underperformance. I think that's going to be the big one for this one. You just have to be comfortable with underperformance, and you have to believe in the trade, like a debasement trade, or believe in both assets, right? You have to really like Bitcoin and definitely, like gold, because Bitcoin is Bitcoin just does not cooperate like everyone wants it to. Real Evil Duck says entire software stack needs to be built from scratch. Man. Yeah, if you switch to like a TPU, to like a Google TPU, yes, I agree with that for sure. Especially these language learning models, like things will not operate just as nice. The whole beauty of like the CUDA library is like there's like there's a little bit of interoperability built between, like you can mix and match hardware. You can have like Nvidia hardware and AMD hardware working simultaneously, like working with each other as part of the CUDA library. Now, don't quote me on that. I could be wrong, but I thought I read or I saw something that was like a bullish case for Nvidia, was that CUDA library like interoperability. Let's see. Super straight guy. Yeah, I wish my knowledge was good. Honestly, I could be talking out of my butt. Let's see. It's the IBS stuff. I think you misspelled it's the IBS stuff. Let's see. BTGD. I remember the staked stuff. Yeah. Let's see. From Quantify Funds. Let's take a look. So yeah, we already know this one. We already just talked about it. But you said the other one was like an income focused one. Let's see. Genesis says, been in the market 20 years. I've never seen such inconsiderate market toward my number one stock, Nvidia. Hey, Mr. Market don't care, man. It's going to be a breakout very soon. Expecting 250 this year. At least continue the DCA. Absolutely. I'm still bullish on Nvidia, man. I know it's been chopping like left and right. It hasn't really been doing much. But I'm still bullish on Nvidia. Like, yes, could returns be better in some smaller semiconductor companies like a Micron? I mean, you guys just saw the chart. I mean, Micron just killed it in 25. So, I mean, yeah, of course. I sleep well at night knowing that I have some exposure to like Nvidia, right? Like I sleep well at night. Let's see. All right, cool. So yeah, if you find that ETF, let me know. But let's see if it's even on here. Holy, yeah, I saw that note you put in the Discord that they got rid of a bunch of their funds, and yeah, it looks like they got rid of a lot of their funds. That is crazy. They have just this one, right? Is that right? Wow, they really got rid of a lot of stuff. This is like a shell of its former glory. Damn, they got rid of a lot, man. They used to have like Nvidia, AMD, or no, it was Nvidia and SMCI, which was a horrible freaking combination. I'm so bearish on SMCI, like it's unbelievable. I don't even know how that company is still on the stock or listed on the stock market. Damn, that's crazy. But anyways, all right, guys. Moving on. Let's see. Yeah, so we already covered Nvidia. Let's see what we got for China. I saw some news about China. China's approving tech companies buying Nvidia's H200 GPUs in some cases. So this is obviously very bullish for Nvidia. This is really good because, you know, there hasn't really been a whole lot of movement or a lot of news about Nvidia's, shipments to China. This was the big thing last year when, the Trump tariffs came and they said, yeah, you're not going to be able to ship any of the Nvidia stuff to China. And there's all this like back channeling, of course. You had like these shell companies buying up the Blackwells, buying up as much, Nvidia products as they can and then shipping it to China. And then right before the tariff started, a lot of Chinese companies had placed orders for Nvidia hardware, right? And then they basically couldn't get it. Now, Nvidia, they did their best to navigate the political landscape. They visited China. Jensen Huang went to China, kind of calm fears down. But then China came out and said, oh, no, Nvidia hardware has a kill switch that, if used, they could shut it down, right? Because there's a whole lot of, geopolitics being played, right? U.S. Versus China. So then China was like advising companies to back off and not use Nvidia chips, and then use domestic chips, right? Use domestic Chinese chips, right? That was pretty much the story up until recent. And then Dan Ives actually went out to Asia, Southeast Asia, and Asia in general, if I'm not mistaken. And he said the demand for Nvidia chips is crazy. Like, it's still there. The demand is still there, right? Jensen Huang made a bunch of, he was just basically saying, like, if we're not in the Chinese market, not only is Nvidia going to lose its share of that market, but that's also going to affect American influence, right? Building on the American stack, building on the American AI stack, right? So he said that was definitely going to happen. But you still have a lot of companies in China, especially the big ones. I think Baba is one of them, Tencent's another. They definitely want these chips. So anyways, let's get through this article real quick. Nvidia shares rose nearly 2% midday. The information reported that China had approved tech companies purchasing H200 GPUs in some cases. The Chinese government told some local companies that the H200 AI accelerators could be purchased under special circumstances, of course, citing examples as university research or development labs. So they're still trying to do that thing where they want to rely domestically on Chinese chips, right? I don't know. Like, I still don't think this is bearish news for Nvidia. If anything, I still think this is still bullish. Eventually, China is going to lift up these restrictions. I mean, there's no second best, right? There's no second best. It's Nvidia or nothing, in my opinion, when it comes to the Chinese market. They need these damn Nvidia chips. And even though Nvidia was not shipping these chips for the last couple of quarters, like their numbers were still really good. Their earnings reports were still really good. They went on that big tour. They're selling to the Middle East. They're selling to Europe. They're doing data centers in Europe. You still have like XAI, Elon Musk's AI company that's buying up Nvidia chips like crazy. You still have the major hyperscalers that still need Nvidia chips. So the demand is there. Like I think the number was like somewhere around $68 billion in demand for Nvidia hardware. So yeah, this is kind of a nothing burger, at least in my opinion. So yeah. Anyways, let's see. So Real Evil Duck says MGTN will be an interesting fund for the options. Expect a ton of Mago spinoffs with a ton of tax efficiency talk. Eugene, how do you feel about AMD? I like AMD. I have nothing against AMD. I just don't have a position in AMD. Lisa Su, I like listening to whenever she does speeches. I haven't seen her keynote at CES. I don't even know if she was at CES. I haven't even caught up with all the damn keynotes. Like so much time in a day. But AMD is really good. I mean, it's a great company. It's been around. If you look at their stock price and the story behind AMD, I mean, they were falling way behind. And then Lisa Su just went on this huge acquisition spree in the last couple of years, just acquiring all these different companies to just basically strengthen AMD. And I mean, it's reflected in AMD's stock price. And, AMD along with Nvidia went on that big tour to basically sell their chips to the world. And she's a big proponent for the American AI stack. So again, I like AMD. It's a cheaper Nvidia, right? It's a cheaper Nvidia. But not only that, like it's also a strict hardware company, right? It's a strict hardware company. I don't think AMD is going to overtake Nvidia anytime soon. But it's still a great company that has a pretty important part to play in the AI thesis in the capex spend for data centers. So I think AMD is good. Yeah, I got no problem with AMD. All right. So anyways, yeah, that was pretty much a nothing burger. Let's see. All right. So we got another fund that got dropped in the chat, MGTN. I think we've seen that before, MGTN, but I don't think I've ever actually looked at it. Oh, this is, yeah, I remember this one. Yeah. This is the Mag 10. Right? Yeah, this is the Mag 10. It's not an official ETF yet, but what it is an index that basically weights the Magnificent 10 now, right? Instead of the Mag 7 ETFs, now you have the Mag 10, which just includes Broadcom, I think Palantir and AMD right there. Yeah, so if these ETFs were to ever come to market, the Mag 10 ETFs, that'll be a lot of good inflows for companies like Broadcom, AMD, and Palantir, right? A lot of passive inflows. I think a Mag 10 would be pretty awesome to have. Yeah, because I'm bullish on Palantir, bullish on Broadcom, but I don't have a position in Broadcom. Same thing with AMD, right? I'm bullish on the semiconductor space in general, right? That's why I own something like an SMH. All right, cool. So let's listen to another clip we have. All right.
Michael Aroni is the chief investment strategist over at State Street Investment Management, which has about $5 trillion in assets under management. Massive ETF provider as well out there. Thank you so much for joining us here. Let's go through what separates cautiously optimistic from uncomfortably bullish.
So uncomfortably bullish, I think we just were watching the president, and he seemed really happy. And we know people love him or hate him, put that aside. But when we look at this, there's a lot for investors to be happy about. So we're going to get fiscal stimulus from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The economy's already expanding. You get monetary policy easing. That's going to help. You mentioned we're kicking off earnings season. Those earnings numbers are going to be great. We're going to have double-digit earnings growth again. The consumer has been resilient and will be supported by tax refunds and also by the World Cup and celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Sprinkle in a little deregulation and continued AI spending. Those are the ingredients to be bullish, Dom.
But uncomfortably so, right?
Well, because what you're almost saying is we've had such a good run. you know, and it feels a little crazy to say after all the double-digit gains we've had back-to-back, it's going to keep going.
I think there's two things that contribute to my discomfort. First is that valuations are certainly higher than normal, but we know they're a poor predictor of short-term price performance. And valuations are high, credit spreads are tight, most measures of market volatility are fairly complacent. So the margin for error is small and the risk of disappointment is big. And I think you're seeing that, right? Today, JP Morgan blew out the top and bottom line numbers, yet given the news cycle, they're actually down a little bit on the day.
Do you think they're down because of the news cycle or because of the earnings?
I don't think they're down because of the earnings at all. I think they're down more because of the potential to push back on policy around credit cards and capping interest rates from that perspective, or credit card rates. The other part of this certainly is kind of the heavy hand of the Trump administration as they turn to a more populist policy. Now, again, this is kind of a natural transition. And from my perspective, whether it's kind of, you can see it, when they announced preventing defense companies from doing share buybacks and dividends, the stocks were down. That very same night, given the policy, kind of the objective of increasing the defense budget so massively, the stocks rallied. And you could see this volatility. So, Kelly, for me, the big takeaway this year is midterm election years tend to be more volatile. The average intraday decline in a midterm election year is 19%. Wow. The other 3 years, it's 12%. So you should expect more volatility, but that doesn't mean we'll end up not in a good spot.
Right, we've heard the May through, I guess, November period is often the weakest and the sell in May. But, you know, can we all sort of say with such confidence, well, it probably will get weak in the middle, heading up to midterms, and then we rally at the end? I mean, can it be so easy as just to say that's probably what's likely to happen? Or is that the fact that that is the most likely playbook that everyone can see tells us that something very different could take place?
Well, I think that the headline, certainly as the year was concluding, the VIX closed below 14 for the first time in more than a year.
Wow.
And I know being at home, maybe you all were celebrating the holidays somewhere, and I was reading, and I was like, boy, that
we were
just
celebrating
seems,
the VIX.
Yeah, I was keeping an eye on the VIX. And Tom, it just seemed like it was so low, too
cheap
calm.
Insurance is what I've heard it called now.
So
right?
Seeing it kind of tick up here, given the headlines, given the potential for the Supreme Court announcement tomorrow, given some of the policy interference, for lack of a better word, I expect this to inject more volatility. But overall, the ingredients for this bull market remain pretty strong. I'll give you quickly, there's been 4 times since 1926.
I think we had enough. Like, yeah, that... Man, like, yeah, so midterm election year in May to November, volatile time. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, guys. Like, for me personally, I'm holding a ton of cash. I'm trying to raise more cash because I think there's gonna be opportunities abound during that period. Will it be a slow grind, down to the downside, or will it be, kind of a grind in the center, volatile up and down, trade kind of flat, or maybe there's just this epic run up, who knows, or sharp decline, right? Nobody really knows what's going to happen. But for me personally, I'm just kind of erring on the side of caution. And then I'm just going to hold a big bag of dry powder until the time to deploy comes about. If that time never really shows up, like, for this year, one, that would be a total bummer. Because I'd just be holding a fat bag of dry powder. But second is because, like, you're saving, you're not saving, but you're keeping all this dry powder for that eventual event, right? And if it doesn't materialize, like, you've missed out on all these gains for the entire year, right? Like, if it metals, Bitcoin, tech, industrials, whatever. You're just missing that entire rally because you're waiting for this one dip, right? So then you have to kind of like take into account, should you DCA some things, dollar cost average some things? Should you, have starter positions in others, and then just wait for like a pullback or down, downtrend? Do you buy on a 5% dip? Do you buy on a 10% dip, right? These are kind of the questions that are running through my mind personally as we're continuing this year, and we're only in the first month of the year. I mean, there's still a lot of time for sure. All right, so we have Palantir that was actually in the news. They are going to be having some lawsuits come out for a competitor of former Palantir employees, right? So these Palantir employees, they basically came out and started their own company called Percepta, right? So Palantir's secret sauce is now also Percepta's secret sauce. So Palantir has raised a lawsuit against these former Palantir execs, former Palantir employees, and it seems like they're kind of trying to scare people within Palantir not to leave the company and go to Percepta, right? So under the threat of a legal action. So I don't know. I don't think this is really going to harm Palantir's price. I'm sure Percepta, if this lawsuit eventually goes away, right? Let's say they settle or nothing happens or Percepta is found innocent. Eventually Percepta is going to probably IPO at some point, and then that will be Palantir's biggest competitor, right? I think. And the likelihood of something like that happening, right? The probability of something like that happening is probably very small at this point, especially if you're part of the Palantir club and you own Palantir. I don't know how I feel about this. I logically, I don't think Percepta is going to be able to destroy Palantir, right? It's going to be able to take away Palantir's edge. Palantir's just, again, I covered it yesterday. Palantir's a fantastic company, been on an absolute tear all of 2025. They've been chopping the last couple of months, but their earnings have been really, really good. Their earnings have been really good. The problem with Palantir is that it's richly overvalued, right? But I'm in the camp, if you look at the Mag 7 and a lot of these AI names, a lot of these tech companies, even before AI was really all the rage, that was always the problem with tech companies, was their valuations, right? Valuations are too much. Valuations are too much, right? It's too expensive. It's too expensive. Right, you have everyone on CNBC, all the financial analysts, everybody, even the people on YouTube, right, saying that these companies are too richly valued, right? But maybe looking at it from a PE perspective, PE ratio perspective, maybe that doesn't really apply to these companies, right? Because they've always been expensive, right? They've always been expensive. They've always been richly overvalued. Yes, if Palantir probably has a bad quarter, it's probably going to crater the share price, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Palantir is still a great company, right? It's still a great company. It's still growing year over year, and it's still putting up great numbers, right? So again, I think at that point, with its pretty high valuation, that the market is just looking for a reason to sell off Palantir. I don't know. I think whenever it comes to the tech companies, because we've heard this so many times that these companies are overvalued. And meanwhile, they just keep trending higher. They just keep going higher. They keep trending higher. They keep putting up these earnings. They keep making new deals, and their share price just keep going up and up and up. And meanwhile, you still have people that are out there, oh, this is too valued, right? This is too expensive. Meanwhile, the companies are making other investors very wealthy. So that has been Palantir's biggest bear case, is that it's too overvalued. People were saying at one point Palantir was a meme stock. It's hard to be a meme stock when you're actually providing value to customers, right? Not only were they providing value to the alphabet agencies, in the DoD, they were also providing value to other companies like industrial warehousing, logistics companies, private companies, finance companies. You had the, I think it was Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac? It was one of those. I think it was Freddie Mac. Palantir was able to sniff out fraud within a couple of hours versus what it took analysts working for Freddie Mac to sniff out over the span of 3 months, right? So Palantir could find and identify fraud much quicker. Now, the IRS is also starting to use Palantir, right? That news slipped in somewhere late 25. So now, IRS is going to start using Palantir. That is going to be interesting. I don't know at like the level that they're going to be using Palantir, if they're going to just be auditing every single, IRS or tax package. But I would suspect if the IRS was to ever fully integrate Palantir, it's going to be really interesting. Not just for, regular people, just the regular household, but probably for businesses, right? People with multiple LLCs or just businesses in general, right? Instead of hiring 40 to 50,000 new IRS agents like they were planning way back when, that whole workforce can now be just replaced with something like a Palantir. So really crazy times, guys. So Big Hat says, everyone expecting a Liberation Day dump this year, so it won't happen. You know what? You might be onto something. If everyone's expecting it, then it's not going to happen, right? It comes when you least expect it. So you might be onto something there. Randy A. Big T, good evening. Hey, good evening to you too. All right. So let's quickly look at the poll here. Do you think gold will reach 5,000 an ounce by mid-2026? We have 26% saying easy. Of course it will, right? Of course. Or that was 56%, excuse me. 56% of you says easy. Of course, right? 26% of you are saying no, it'll be the year end. And then 18% of you says, I don't buy gold. All right. So I bring all of that up because I want to cover this little bit of news here. So gold slips while silver hits another record as the safe haven appeal stays strong. So earlier I was talking about how like the Fed independence, the central bank, if it comes into question, you know, we could probably see a bigger flock, or, you know, probably a bigger flock to gold, right? And it looks like that might actually be a case. You know, that might be probably a base case, if anything. Gold futures eased off record highs while silver topped $89 an ounce before trimming some of its gains as uncertainty stemming from President Trump's continued attacks on the Federal Reserve and unrest in Iran, with Trump saying he canceled meetings with Iranian officials and told Iranian protesters that help is on the way, continue to make precious metals highly sought by investors as a safe haven. So all of 2025, excuse me, I got to have some coffee real quick. So all of 2025, you had gold just making new all-time highs just because of the narrative that was playing out, right? When the Trump tariffs came, a lot of people were saying stagflation. People were saying inflation. People were saying depression, recession, right? All the major institutions were coming out with their forecasts saying, yeah, we're for sure 60, 70% heading into a recession. Second half of 25 or you know, in the end of 25, none of that happened. Gold continue increasing in value. And then of course, you have geopolitical unrest that occurs, right? And that's also, you know, where investors will flock to. You have the whole narrative around the dollar weakening, right? The US dollar weakening. You had BRICS coming out. They made a bunch of waves last year. You had a bunch of deals coming about. Basically trying to remove the world off of the US dollar. And a lot of people were flocking to gold, right? Just gold is the store of value. And of course, most of that didn't really play out the way some may have thought, or maybe it was just too early. But yeah, gold, based with all the tailwind behind it, in my opinion, of course, with all the tailwind behind it, you have the debasement trade, which again, we already covered. We have the debasement trade. You have the government printing money like it's going out of style, right? So this is going to be bullish for gold, right? You have monetary policy, quantitative easing that is potentially happening this year. Lower interest rates by the Fed, quantitative easing, more money heading into the markets. You know, this is all a bullish sign for gold. And then of course you have political unrest in other countries. You know, things like Iran. Iran is pretty much toppled at this point. I think their Iran dinar, not dinar, I think it's a real, I forget what the actual currency is called, but the Iranian currency is zero at this moment. And a lot of crazy stuff is happening in Iran. But again, like I mentioned, you know, on yesterday's stream, like everything that happens in the bigger world, in the macro, affects the stock market, right? Affects the markets. It is always a good thing to just be aware of what's going on, and you can kind of, you know, guess your way through, you know, based off, you know, a best educated guess of what assets are going to do well. You know, when all this crazy stuff was happening in the Middle East and in Europe, you know, with the Russian-Ukraine war, and in the Middle East you had, you know, the Syrian civil war and everything else in that area. Bitcoin was actually going higher because people were trying to get their money out of their countries, right? You had Russia that got kicked off the SWIFT system, and Bitcoin had a huge run up, right? A lot of cryptocurrencies did, because all these wealthy to-do people were taking their money out of Russian banks and putting their money into cryptocurrencies and putting it on like a wallet, right? Or something like that. But that is really how you look at a lot of this stuff. It's not just Bitcoin go up, right? It's why can Bitcoin go up? At least that's kind of like how I look at it. So it's just really interesting. So Citigroup said it now sees gold reaching $5,000 an ounce and silver hitting $100 an ounce in the next 3 months. So we'll see if it's 5,000 by year end or 5,000 by mid year. All right, we expect the gold market to stay intact in the near term, Citi said in a note. Our base case is for eventually moderating geopolitical risk to weigh on hedging demand for precious metals later in the year, particularly on gold. So any gold bugs out there, I'm sure you guys are sitting pretty. So let's end that poll. Skeptic says, who the hell is not buying gold after all these gains? That is true. I like I said a lot of times, I was never a big believer in gold. But, you know, thankfully, you know, to Victor, I don't know if you're watching, Victor, but, you know, shout out to you. Definitely opened my eyes to how exciting the metals market is and how exciting the precious metals are, you know, gold, silver. And it really, like, again, me personally, I like to not trade, but invest on themes, right? So my big ones for now, and I'm looking at this other one, and it's kind of all starting to tie together, really, when you think about it. But yesterday we talked about this government super cycle, right? And I'm thinking like, oh, it's just defense spending, right? But no, everything that, all the super cycles that are happening now is the government super cycle, right? And this is kind of just a thesis, right? You have the debasement trade, right? That's part of it. You have the debasement trade where the government's trying to just inflate their money or you know, print their money out of inflation, right? Just print their way out of trouble, right? That is what it is. So this is obviously going to send asset prices rocketing, right? Things like gold for sure. You also have the AI trade, right? This is government sponsored, whether people want to believe that or not. This is government sponsored for sure. You have favorable regulatory environment that is a huge tailwind for AI data center capex and for the AI story. Not only that, you have the crypto super cycle for Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? Maybe not so much Bitcoin, but definitely for Ethereum. You have big banks, JP Morgan, Citigroup, or not Citigroup, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. You have all these different huge banks building on the Ethereum blockchain, right? And it's because of the act, right? This crypto act and everything, the Clarity Act that's being pushed by the government, right? So again, this is more or less a government super cycle. And it includes all of these other things, right? And then you have defense spending, right? You have this huge influx of money, right? Trump just increased it from, you know, 1 trillion to 1.5 trillion, or he's trying to get it increased. You know, so again, there's all this money being pumped into the markets. So this is like all these little tiny, or not tiny, but all these separate super cycles, like the metal super cycle, that is also because of government policy, right? That's also because of government policy. At least I think so. Like it started to make sense to me because the U.S. government's trying to do reshoring. There's Trump policies, there's geopolitical stuff, you know, between Trump and China. There was an article pushed out. I think Bessent's heading to, or invited Australia to the G7 for talks on rare earths or critical rare earth metals. So again, all of these things are all policy driven, right? So if you want to know like how to play this theme, how to play this, the themes that are out there, just look at what the government is doing and where their focus is. And they don't try to hide it either. I mean, you just have to try to listen to, you know, what people in the administration are saying and what they're talking about. Like the whole thing with Venezuela, Again, I'm a firm believer that it was really just to get a jab and lessen China's influence in the Western Hemisphere. So again, I am obviously America first. I want American interests above all else. But not only that, I don't want to bet against America, right? I don't want to bet against America, as Warren Buffett has always said. I would not bet against America. Let's see. Big Hat says, oh, wait. Got to go up a bit. So Evil Duck says, I am not the physical gold, at least have a couple £100 in paper though. And that's another thing. Like I have a little bit of like physical gold, just chains, bracelets, that kind of stuff. Not for me, obviously. I don't wear that stuff. It's just, I've been told, and I'm sure gold bugs out there will disagree, but I've been told like it's harder to like move gold, right? It's easy if you have chains, right? Chains, bracelets, that kind of stuff. Cause you can wear it, right? If you're transiting between countries, like you just wear it and like, oh no, I'm not selling it, right? It's my stuff, right? But it's easy for you to sell it in those countries, right? Or easier, right? Relatively speaking. If I held like $50,000 in gold bars, right? Or nuggets or whatever those tiny little things are. If I had that on my carry-on bag, I'm getting stopped by TSA or by someone else. I'm getting stopped, right? And I'm going to have to pay the customs fees or whatever, the tax on that. So I don't know. Like I prefer not to hold physical gold personally. I'm more of the paper gold, tiger, I guess, because it's liquid. It's a highly liquid ETF. I can get in, get out. If I need money in a pinch, I could just sell out of it and I wouldn't have to worry about it. Meanwhile, I'm still getting all the gains of real physical gold. So that's my thought on it. I'm not saying one is better than the other. Both have pros and cons. Like I knew a person in the Middle East. He told his girlfriend, his girlfriend was telling him the story and he was telling me that she would always travel with gold rings. Like 24 karat, like pure gold rings, right? 4 or 5 of them on her hand. And these were not like light rings. These were like heavy, like pretty heavy. And the whole reason was because her mother at one point got screwed. Like her wallet was stolen, her credit cards were stolen, phone was stolen, everything was stolen, right? But she had gold rings. So she was able to basically go to a jewelry store, sell all that stuff, right? Sell it, like pawn it off, I guess, take the money and be able to purchase her plane ticket or, a cell phone or whatever, right? So I just thought that was really interesting, right? That is one way to kind of protect yourself, right? To have these gold rings around your hand, right? Wherever you go in the world. Of course, I wouldn't be caught dead wearing, gold in a very questionable neighborhood, but, in the Middle East, primarily most of the countries there are relatively safe. Okay, so let's see what else we got. Yeah, Odysseus 4 said, yeah, it's real. Yeah, because there's like the dinar, there's the real, and then there's real. I don't know. There's so many damn freaking currencies out that way. Big Hat says, I like copper over gold, silver right now on a reward or risk reward basis. That is awesome. Yeah, silver is definitely having its time in the limelight. And I didn't realize, and Evil Duck had mentioned this at one point, but silver has so much industrial use, right? Like how much silver goes into an EV battery. I didn't even know silver was in an EV battery. But yeah, there's a lot of silver that is used just on an industrial basis, not just for chains, right? Not just for looking good, but silver is used in a lot of different electronics, a lot of different industrial cases. So I'm still learning a lot in the metal space. I think it's a very fascinating space. I always used to think it was like an old man space. Like this is what old traders, or old investors look into. But I didn't realize like how exciting it is, especially now with everything that's going on in the broader world and at a government level or governmental level, especially between countries, like how crazy the metal space really is. And if you look at some of these metals, they're just doing really freaking well year to date for 2025 into 26. Real Evil Duck says copper, nickel, lithium, uranium are not in the spotlight right now. just the way you want it to be to get in. Silver and gold are too loved now, and I agree with that. I opened some of my own positions on copper, nickel, lithium, and uranium, and I think I might be increasing my positions here soon. It's always hard. Like, you're always worried that if you get in, right, especially me, because I got the worst luck. Like, if I buy in, I'll let you guys know, so then you guys can just like store your dry powder, because as soon as I buy, everything's gonna dip. But yeah, I want to increase my metals allocation or my metal sleeve. I would definitely I'm definitely looking at doing that. Probably I want to see how things are going to pan out over these next probably couple of weeks. Skeptic says Bitcoin 120 when? Shoot, man. I don't know. Tom Lee was talking, our boy Tom Lee was saying by the end of the month. So let's see. Grumpy Toad, hey, welcome. Yeah, Bitcoin 120. Well, guys, I don't really have that much more. I mean, I have another video, but this is from the Defense Department. So, I mean, I don't know. I think after this, I'll probably call it. I'll probably call it for the stream, and because I gotta get my butt to a gym. All right, I'm trying to keep this health going.
So I want to start with the news that has just been out in the last 24 hours, and that is this unveiling of an AI acceleration strategy. What does that mean?
What that means is that the Department of War has historically not deployed AI to its full potential. And in this environment, with AI really exploding in industry and for consumers over the last 2 years, it's the time to get AI to the 3 million employees at the Department of War across several domains. Enterprise use cases, like you'd use in any company for efficiency. Intelligence, which is specific to the Department of War, and for warfighting, which obviously is specific as well. And using the max capabilities that these companies that invested hundreds of billions of dollars in their AI models, bringing them to the Pentagon and to the warfighter.
Yeah, and of course, you're leaning into the commercial capabilities that are already out there in an even bigger, more meaningful way. So how quickly can you bring that into all of these different areas for the department?
Yeah, that's the right question, because speed wins, is what Secretary Hegseth said yesterday in his speech at Starbase with Elon. And we've already deployed Gemini, Google's model, to 3 million Department of War employees, and we've had almost 1 million use it, uniques, which means that people are clamoring for this stuff. So soon, in the next month or so, we're going to bring on Grok, XAI's model, and then hopefully some of the other frontier models as well. But the idea is we want the newest model in front of everyone across every classified and unclassified network so they could do their work in the most optimal way.
What have the lessons been that have been learned so far as you do bring some of these models in and you do start to deploy them across the department?
The lessons that we are learning and that we will learn, just like when people tried ChatGPT for the first time, they learned there were some imperfections, but the leverage you get on efficiency and how much time it saves you and what it could do given the context windows and the amount of data it synthesizes is incredible. So the way I view it is that if we can make 3 million employees be able to do the work of 10 million employees because they are now more efficient, more empowered, can use their time more effectively, then we're really going to increase the fighting force of that same workforce by doing, where they could do more with less time.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to pause the video here, guys, because I think that was a really interesting point. Having worked in the DoD, right, as a contractor, you see the bloated, like the bloatedness of some things, right? It's almost criminal, like especially with defense contractors. Like you'll have an overabundance of staff doing minimal work, right? Very minimal work, right? But also on the government side, you'll have an overabundance of civilian employees that are not really truly doing much, right? They're just bullshitting, to be honest. They're just bullshitting their way until they can get a retirement. Not everyone, of course, not everyone. But yeah, I've seen it firsthand, and I agree 100%. And if the government, again, like they have been, if they're moving towards the adoption of AI, who are going to be the major players, right? Obviously, he mentioned OpenAI, ChatGPT. You'll probably have Gemini, Gemini being used. Palantir is already being used. But yeah, like when you're looking at a productivity thing, right? When you're looking at productivity, what extends beyond that, what extends beyond the productivity thing is also offensive capability, right? If you look or follow what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, you'll know that drones have been heavily used in the warfighting effort, right? Putting less troops at risk of combat. Because you could have a FPV drone, a simple, $100 drone strapped with a bunch of C4, run into a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment and take out that multi-million-dollar piece of equipment, right? With no lives lost. So you can see that beyond just that, the the productivity, looking at warfighting, who could the major players be? Like Ondas, I think is going to be one of those players. Personally, I no longer hold any Ondas shares, but you have Ondas, you have Red Cat, you have people are waiting on the Anduril IPO if that ever comes about. But you have all these drone companies that are starting to have their spot in the light. So again, looking at the bigger thing, the bigger context of everything, if the Pentagon or the Department of Defense is going to be focusing on using AI, what does that look like? Offensive capabilities, it's probably going to be drone warfare, right? For regular everyday use, probably, the Googles, the OpenAIs, the Geminis. And then you have like probably the tech that's going to go with that, right? I don't know what other tech that could be, in terms of like, hardware or actual like vehicles. But it is worth keeping an eye on and listening to what these people say, so people can plan accordingly for their own investments. But anyways, that'll do it for me, guys. I think I am done. Thank you guys for chilling with me for this last hour. And letting me get through my coffee, letting me just drone on about nonsense for the last hour. But with that being said, guys, I'm going to hit the gym. I will see you guys in the next video. I'll see you guys in the next stream. You guys have a wonderful evening wherever you are in the world. And of course, thank you for joining me. All right. So you guys take care.